Servant leadership really is the key to scaling a business and growing a team. But that doesn't mean that you have to compromise progress and action. Today, we talk with business coach Matt Bresee, who shares the difference between management and leadership and how it all starts with you. Matt, why coaching and mentoring for you?
For me, Michelle, is kind of a couple of drivers, really. I've had various leadership roles that I've filled over the course of 25 years or so, and found myself I always really enjoy the mentor part of it. What struck me is over the past few years or so, I've had actually a couple of people that had previously worked with me, worked for me, and it resonated when a couple of them came back to me and said when they worked with me, there were times that they didn't quite like me, so to speak. But what they found is later on, they appreciated maybe some ways that I challenged them. So, kind of the light bulb went off and said, I really enjoy that. I enjoy the servant leadership part of it. And, the other thing that I thought about when I sort of started the journey into actual business coaching was when I was a child, my father was a machinist, blue collar, never went to college. Machinist his whole life. And when I was young, I'm one of three kids. I'm the baby. And when I was young, he started his own company. In fact, it was called Matt. My brother's name is Brad. My name is Matt. So he named his company Matt. And my dad, again, wonderful machinist. He had a couple of concepts that actually related to boating. We live right here on Lake Erie. And I remember he developed a little prop for a fishing boat. And I remember, it's a little foggy, but I remember being a child and him opening the shop and having a couple of people work for him and going to shows and trying to do the hard work. Back then, this is the early 80s. So life was a little different at that point in time. But ultimately, the business didn't survive. And while I don't know all the details, he's since passed and I don't know all the circumstances behind that. I couldn't help think as I got into the business coaching of, how a business coach could help someone like my dad. And in these times now, as I'm starting to talk to business owners, entrepreneurs, people just starting out, I can't help but have that thought in the back of my head that what business coaching might have meant for Matt and my father. So with that, this has really been a passion project for me, is to take everything I've kind of learned in the last 25 plus years in various corporate roles and businesses, and put that together with the intellectual property and the training with Action Coach, and be able to help business people, executives, leaders develop their people, and ultimately help their business.
Oh, well said. Matt, you mentioned servant leadership. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, servant leadership, for me is just putting others first. It's really seeing challenges through the lens of those that come to you with questions, problems, challenges. Seeing others succeed, lifting them up, but at the same time knowing that their success is your success. And I've been fortunate to be part of some teams, lead some teams where I got to kind of experience that, and ideas that would come our way, and really allowing others to develop sort of right in front of me, or again, giving them a framework and maybe saying, hey, this is my experience. I was always careful to say it's my experience because I need to at least share with you what I know about it, but I don't want that to deter you from I'm not making the decision for you. There could be circumstances are different, times are different, et cetera. So servant leadership for me is really just about that, is just putting others first, and the feeling you get from that, seeing others succeed. That's success in and of itself for me.
Ah, that's so powerful. Matt, you mentioned that there were some things that you might have said to your team at the time that they thanked you for later. What's an example of that?
I remember one thing. I worked in professional sports for a little over 20 years. And the game day program, again, back in those days where you printed kind of your annual yearbook and you'd be so proud of it right at the beginning of the season. And I remember one particular year that it's opening day for baseball. We're gearing up, we're ready to go. We're waiting. Of course, last minute printing company comes and delivers. That morning our printed programs, and as maybe those that ever worked in sports can relate. It's kind of like Christmas morning is opening day. And when the programs show up and you go out and you tear into that first one, you pull that out, it's that feeling of like, hey, this is it. This is a lot of hard work we've put into sponsors, partners, stories, etc. And I can remember just one particular year that there were just a few inaccuracies. There were a few things when I looked at the quality of it, just didn't really kind of stack up to the level that I wanted. And I remember this particular person that at the time, they were okay with it. That was their project to oversee. And while we all, again, took accountability for it in the end, we didn't see eye to eye on that project. And at the time, that's one of those, long story short, several years later came back and said, oh, it was an attention to detail thing, right? It was that, at what level, what quality that you set your expectations for. And we clearly had different expectations. So I looked at that as a teachable moment for me too, whether those weren't communicated clearly, right? As we teach, sort of staying above the point, taking accountability for that, owning that, not pointing the finger and saying we certainly had a disconnect there. So we moved on from it, and life went on, but that's what stuck with me.
It is one of those tricky things in leadership, isn't it? Especially in servant leadership style, where you do want to empower people, your team, but you don't want to lower the standard. You want to raise the bar. So how do you do that in an empowering way with your team? Because sometimes you got to have the hard conversations and the standard is not okay.
Well, I think it starts with clarity up front, setting the standard and having that. So if it's a project that, I'm going to allow one of my team members to do and take the lead on, I also think it's important. It's sort of the, teach them how to fish kind of concept of, I just don't want to let them out to dry, hang out to dry, right? I want to guide them as much as I can in the beginning to say, hey, this is going to be your project to own, but here's kind of the level of expectations, and here's what I know about it, and then you sort of let them go. I think the other thing that's important is, and then again, depending on the project or what that looks like, is regular check-ins with them, allowing them the opportunity for feedback along the way, so that it allows that sort of constant communication, where again they know that you have their best interests in mind. And with that, then if you have to have that difficult conversation, it becomes a lot easier. If they know that you have their best interest, it's that tough love concept, where if they know that you care about them, you care about their development, their well-being, their future progress, etc., then it's easier to have some of those harder conversations when you have to.
Yeah, I love that. So creating that foundation first, the clarity, and creating an environment where it's safe. I think if people feel safe, then, you can have those, more tougher conversations like you've suggested. So one of the things I've been really excited to ask you is, you mentioned you've got 20 years of experience in professional sports. When you look at business, how different is that because in sports, it is a business, right?
That's right. And that's where I worked on the business side of sports. In basketball, we had, business operations, basketball operations, same kind of thing in baseball were my experiences. And I think that's why I love business coaching, is because the analogies are so much the same. In fact, almost every one of my coaching conversations, we have the analogy of sports, depending on what their sport is. Sometimes I'll tie it into them. I had someone I was meeting with just last week, and when I saw him, he's a big guy, and he came in the room. He said he was a former athlete, and I said, "You must have played football." And he said, "No, I played rugby." And I said, "Okay, well they were tougher anyway than football players." So we used rugby as the example, and that's in coaching. It's the ability to put in offense. The coach is on the sideline. He can tell that the players can see what's happening. He can evaluate at halftime. He can watch film and give his feedback. But at the end of the day, it's all about the players on the field that really make things happen. And that's exactly what a coaching relationship is that we're the guide, we're the other set of eyes, we're the person that's going to challenge them. And actually, that's in his case, that's why he actually came to me in the first place, is he said, former athlete, I actually performed well when someone was pushing me. And now him and his wife, are in a business that it's at the point where they're trying to raise 3 kids, run $1 million business, and they're growing, and they're burning out in the process. So he kind of said to me, I know a coach can help me, because he then told me some stories about some coaches he had in high school and college about he did well when he kept them on that schedule. He pushed them just when he didn't think he could go any further. A coach would encourage him or push him a certain way. But that's why I love the analogies with what we do, because it really is so much like sport is what business coaching is about.
So now that you know what you know, what do you think is kind of the biggest shift or like aha moment, BFO for you, with all the things that you've learned through coaching and action coach education that we provide, that you can go, that's it. That's the one thing that I think would have really helped or can help and make a big difference in business?
Well, mindset is such a big part. I was one that, again, because I was in the live entertainment business, when COVID hit, that was a tough time, for me personally. It was kind of where I kind of pivoted. Long story short, coming out of COVID a year later is when I left the sports industry. But for me, it was when I kind of poured into that of the mindset of knowing that, hey, this is a new challenge in front of me. Where am I going to pivot from here? In what ways do I need to grow? What else do I need to learn? And the growth mindset to believe that I'm capable of that. And this journey that I've been on has certainly been all of that. But really, starting 4 or 5 years ago with me, really, I would say I was always a relatively positive person. But when you're challenged like that, and don't get me wrong, my problems, my issues around COVID certainly were not what a lot of people in the world were. But for me, it was a challenge of just life changing significantly. And that's when I really kind of started with positive leadership, knowing that starting right at my own home, that I wanted to still be the person for my wife, my kids, my family, to be that one, to be positive, to say that, hey, the future is going to be just fine. Put in the work. What do I need to learn? Again, how do I need to grow? And that's when kind of the coaching aspect really started to come in to play too, because I thought that I've got to show up for myself first so that I can mentor, lead, and pour into others. And when I was able to do that with a lot of support from, again, reading books, listening to podcasts, and using all the resources that were available to me, that's when it started to continue to click that I really just enjoyed that mentoring part of it. Because then I also found as part of that journey, as I got into a little bit more, what I found was there were a lot of people that were much further away from that mindset than I was. So I thought, if I can help encourage some others to say that, hey, where you are now isn't where you need to stay. You can always grow. You can always be challenged. You can always learn. And, the lifelong learner, if I can help share that with others and help them grow in the process, I found that I really enjoy that. And that's a big piece of coaching. We invest a lot of time. What I really enjoy about Action Coach is how much time we invest in really the personal development of whoever we're working with on the other side, be that a business owner, their partners, executives, CEOs, whoever we're working with. We really start with the people and the person, because as they show up better for their company, their business, their organization, they show up better for their family at home. They show up better for their employees, their teammates, and their team is going to then drive the business, and the customers will drive the business, so that's kind of the cycle that we really believe in. But what I really enjoy is helping people kind of get that sometimes there's a little bit of breakthrough that needs to happen with that, because anytime we start coaching, oftentimes we have to prepare them that if you're a busy business owner, it's going to get more challenging first before it is likely to get better. So we've got to get their buy-in that they're prepared for that, and mindset is a big thing for that. And it's got to be consistent. As positive as I might seem or sound, we all have days, we all have times that we need to be reminded, we need to be lifted up. So daily affirmations about who I am and what I'm capable of. Then what's important is you don't stay there very long, and that's where we come into as a coach, is just again bring people along to recognize when they need to kind of work through a challenge. Because as we say, like whenever you're going through that challenge, it's going to change you. It's going to change you for the positive, for the better. And typically there's a good breakthrough coming through on the other side.
That's a big shift in thinking, isn't it? Like, because most people, we want to run away from the pain, not lean into it. So for you, when you think about that, the mindset that you had of showing up for yourself first, there's lots of learning that we can do. There's never before have we had access to so much information and ways to learn. But what's the thing that kind of does empower you versus disempower you?
Well, I think if I understand the question right, I would say it really comes back to that, just taking ownership for your actions. One of my I am statements that I read every day is I am in control of my actions today. And that has to do with everything from do I get up and go to the gym in the morning or not? Do I read or listen to a podcast or learn something different or not? Do I stay in that comfort zone where it's easy to stay in that familiar space? Or do I step into an area that I'm not as familiar with, but it's going to take some learning and some growing for it? So I think for me, it really starts there, is just owning that I'm ultimately responsible, for those actions, and it's where I choose to step into or not. That will decide, how much I continue to grow or develop.
Yeah, what an awesome answer. So it's really ownership. It's so easy to blame other things that are happening around us. Feels like there's lots of chaos going on and lots of things that you could blame, whether that's the economy or, obviously things like, the COVID and things that we've had just in the recent years. But really, those kind of things are probably like that, have been there in some sense. How do you sort of, you said take ownership of how I feel and show up every day. How do you actually do that? What's your process?
It's control what you can control.
Control what you can control. Okay.
Yeah, some of the things you mentioned, right? It's out of our control. So therefore, if you look at the situation and say, it comes back to again the classic high school coach, that taught me about attitude and effort. Right, the things that we control, every day, regardless of our circumstances. Right, being a great teammate. In fact, one of my early learnings was playing JV basketball. Right here, not even varsity basketball, playing JV basketball, and a good leadership learning. And this goes a little bit off the control you control topic, but when you talk about leadership, I remember somebody being asking me, what was one of my first experiences with leadership? And I said, you know what? I didn't know it at the time, but as the captain of my JV basketball team, my friend Tom and I were the captains. And of course, we got like hand-me-down, uniforms being the JV team, right? It was like the old ones that the varsity team wore like 7 or 8 years ago. And we didn't have enough pants for everybody to have warm-up pants. And here, my JV coach said, well, as the captains, you guys don't get pants. And I thought, well, wait a minute. But we're the captains. Shouldn't we be the first ones to get pants? And basically he said, no, you're the leaders of the team. You go without. The rest of the team gets them. And again, sort of coming back to that sort of servant leadership, that framed some things for me that as simple as that was a lesson in, leaders lead. And sometimes it's we go without, or we have to sacrifice something for the good of the team, for the good of the people, good of the organization. So some of those learnings, came, and that's again why sport is such a good teacher, because you really can control what you can control when it comes to kind of attitude, effort, and assess the circumstance. Analyze how you should address it, and then make some decisions on what you can control from there.
So, what's coming up for me as you share that is, Simon Sinek's, I think it's his book, Leaders Eat Last. So it's the same kind of concept. And I think the trust, the foundation that you talked about for your business and for your team, where they truly know that you have their back, that they're part of something greater, you're leading by example, you're controlling what you can control. I feel like you're really pulling together a bit of a formula for leadership that you, through what you've shared so far. What's next, though? Because sometimes you do need to pivot, or your leadership is kind of questioned, or like, what's the next part for leaders that they've got the foundation right now? How do they still kind of create the strategy to drive the business forward, grow team dynamics? What's the next part of the leadership process?
Well, I think for what we experience, what I see with a lot of people that I coach is they are good leaders, but some of them are just they're doing too much. They're trying to do too much and manage too much. I think it comes down to kind of clarity and focus. And I guess I say that in the sense that, for their team, again, if they are empowering their team in the right way, they're going to keep their team focused on either the goals, the vision, the mission of the organization, any number of things that they want to, focus their team on. Right. So that's the difference between management and leadership, right? Management's more about the processes. Leadership's more about the passion and purpose behind what they're doing and leading their people. So I think what we see a lot is, believe it or not, some of the people that we coach, they're great leaders, but the next step is oftentimes getting themselves not even just organized, but just having a plan, having that accountability to stick to the plan, having direction and clarity for where they're going, and then just making sure that they're communicating to the rest of the team about that and doing it regularly. And I think I've learned that I haven't always been the most successful at that myself, because, as you said too, you want to show your team that, and I've done this a lot where I was willing to kind of work right alongside them. I was never going to ask anyone to do anything that I hadn't already done, at least somewhere in my journey. And that's the truth. If we had more time, I could tell you about some of the dirty work I've literally done, in my early days of sports, for sure. You really cut your teeth that way. But I could always say genuinely that I was never going to ask anybody to do anything that I didn't. As a result of that, it kind of comes to the case too, where I know, our founder, Brad Sugar, says that, your door being open all the time isn't always the best thing for a leader, because you've got to prioritize your own time. And that can be a challenge. So I think that what's important is when you create some of that clarity and focus, that helps you manage your time, helps you prioritize. But on occasion, we all need a reset. We all need that time where we take a step back, because I think it's very natural and easy to do to get caught up in the day-to-day. Again, depending on your role or the organization, just taking that reset and making sure you're taking time to reflect get refocused then if you need to. And again, that communication with the team, I think, is probably the most effective way you can continue to lead them while you're still, prioritizing your own time and your own tasks.
So you mentioned, when you talk about servant leadership, and you put your people first, but you still, as a CEO or business leader, need to have that clarity. You need to, at the end of the day, be the one to make the decision based on your knowledge and experience, or gut feel on what you feel is the best move for the business. So it is that balance, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of, you want to hear what everybody else has got to say, but you still have to have that clarity and confidence that you know where to steer the ship.
For sure. And there's been, several times I can think, that in a leadership role that I did, you ask for input, and then it's sort of up to the leader to balance all that, take all that in, ultimately then make the decision and then own it from there. And I've had, occasions where I then you have to have those talks, or have not so much difficult talks, but at least pull somebody and say, hey, I respect what you suggested. However, we're going to go in a different direction, and here's why. And, it's sometimes I've made those decisions where they might have been good. Sometimes they might have been bad. But there's always learnings, from that. So that it is a delicate balance, but at the end of the day, yeah, as the leader, you've got to own it, and you've got to say, hey, there's a reason that there's one person put in charge, because ultimately when a decision A or B or black or white or whatever the case is needs to be made, it's up to that person to make it.
So you mentioned the difference between leadership and management. I know that Action Coach has got some training programs that really teach the different elements of management and also leadership. Separately, they're really two different roles. So you talked about leadership as, the clarity, direction, the vision for the business. Management is really the process and systems. They're kind of, we don't really often separate those two roles, do we? Like, as a leader of a business or a CEO, you just wear all the hats. And so what's a tool or strategy that you can teach business owners or leaders that can help them switch those hats?
Yeah, for me, it's, you said it's manage the process, lead the people. And I guess an example could be, if you've got team members and they're in charge of various projects, within our management training, it's a complete operating system to where there's a regular cadence of meetings, how they can check in each week. You can look at last week, you look at your issues, look at opportunities, look at next week. So you have that regular cadence with each of your people. And I think that in terms of the leadership piece is, just be fully present, right? So when it's one thing to have that meeting, and in this day and age, we can certainly do this where, hey, I've got that meeting on the schedule. Michelle, you're on my team. We have that meeting scheduled for every Thursday at 9 a.m. And we're almost doing it to check the box. But in terms of leadership, I want to come in, make sure my phone's my phone's put away. I'm not checking email. I don't have my computer monitor in front of me. But I can come and I can sit, and this is our dedicated time that in terms of the management process, we're going to go through the tasks, maybe the goals for the week, challenges you're having, how I can help. But then I really believe you've got to have a little bit that human piece too, and say, I like to say, how's Michelle today? How's Michelle feeling? What's Michelle got going on? And whether that's personal or business related, I think that humanizes it. So I think it comes back to that know, like, and trust factor, whether it's with someone we're coaching or, like I said, a team member, someone we're leading on our team, is making sure that you're being present for them, and just the authenticity piece, right? Leading people can be done when you're authentic with them. There's no hidden agenda. Yes, there's difficult conversations to have sometimes, but those become easier if the other things are in place first. They know you care about them. They know you're authentic with them. It makes some of those difficult conversations better. And then when you are managing things and something doesn't get done or a task doesn't happen, those are other, conversations that become easier. just because there's that accountability factor. And obviously, good team members are going to appreciate accountability.
Ah, there's so much I'd love to unpack in that. One thing that I was just thinking as you were sharing about the weekly meeting, it's so easy when you like I was thinking it's so important that you have to have that why that mindset is so important as the foundation piece that you mentioned earlier, because you can't show up as your best version for people around you if you're in that chaos kind of mindset. So I know for me, with weekly meetings that I have with my team, being so action orientated and driven, you just instantly want to get straight to, okay, where are we up to with this? But you got to be so conscious of stopping and being present. And that's a really good reminder that you just shared. So thank you. I love the process that Action Coach has. It's called a WIFLE. Can you walk me through what the WIFLE is, Matt?
Yeah, I'd love to. So the WIFLE stands for what I feel like expressing. And we start every coaching session with it. We start our various team meetings with it. And what it does is it really opens up that opportunity to hear from everybody, either on the call or in the meeting, and gives everybody at least a couple of minutes to just do that, get something off their chest, express something about their family. If it's a Monday, they reflect maybe a little bit on the weekend. And what you find is it just sort of takes down barriers a little bit initially, for opening up conversation and just allowing things to flow, because oftentimes you'll learn something then about somebody, and then then you can kind of flow into the rest of the meeting from there. But what I feel like expressing is a great way to do that. And in other roles and jobs, it's just been tell me something good. There's a number of different things. It could be a trick either at the dinner table with the family or in a business setting.
Having done this practice for some time now, it still blows my mind how much this brings up things for people that they probably would have never have otherwise shared. And I just have a very recent example before we jumped on this podcast to do today's show. I had a meeting and we started with the WIFLE, and she'd had a really traumatic experience on the weekend where unfortunately somebody had jumped from a building and landed right in front of her and lost their life. And for her, she just was really struggling to process that. The whole meeting ended up being holding space for her to talk about that challenge she was experiencing. And if we didn't do that WIFLE, I would have jumped straight into, okay, where are we up to? What's happening? So, you just never know what people have going on. It doesn't have to be always a positive. It can be whatever is happening for them that they want to get off their chest.
Yeah, I mean that's a great unfortunate example, but that's a great example of it just allows a different level of learning about, particularly in a team setting, too, that then ultimately creates connectivity, and those are things from a culture perspective you just can't put a value on.
Mm. So, anything else when you think about there's so much that pressure and responsibility that rides on a manager, a leader, someone steering the organization, someone in charge of people, team. It's this combination of servant leadership. It's a combination of having the processes, the accountability, the management hat, as well as the leadership. Being clear on the vision. I mean, that's a lot. And then you still have to run the business at the same time. So, what is next then? Let's say they've got that down pat, and that's obviously a consistent learning experience and constant journey that you're trying to figure out and managing and refining. Coming back to mindset, you've got to continuously grow and learn, like you said. What's what's the next step of learning for leaders in organization?
Well, I think it's obviously dealing with the next new things that come up, right? AI, since that has evolved, and what that means and changes every single day, and the whole list of things as different circumstances evolve. But I think another piece that's so crucial is surrounding yourself just with the right people, and that's whether obviously the obvious one is within your organization, but I think it's important with the relationships you also have, whether obviously at home, but as I love the term, how iron sharpens iron is like-minded people that you interact with regularly, and how you find them. And there's a number of ways, whether it's even just a networking group of like-minded individuals. In my case, I've got everything from a men's group that I meet with to even just a simple Facebook group, that I'm a part of, that we try to encourage and uplift each other. And I think that's important too, is when you not only have like-minded people, but other people that are going through the same challenges that you are. And as it relates to coaching, having a business coach perhaps in your corner too, particularly if you're an executive, you're a business owner, sometimes you feel like you're on an island. It's also having someone that you can talk through that. You can have a whiffle with, and sometimes you might start that whiffle at the start of a coaching session, and we'll go for 20 minutes. And if that's what's needed that day, then that's what we'll do that day. But I also think that as you put yourself in those situations, you'll be able to find that you're going to be able to give that encouragement also at times. But I also love too the Action Coach community, where we provide that. We provide opportunities for our clients to come together, and that's one other way of a group that you can surround yourself that are going to support you, through those challenges. Because, like I said, we all fall back. I've heard some of the most, positive people, some of the authors that I read, et cetera, that they all admit that, nobody's perfect. We don't always stay above the point of power. We don't always stay positive. But again, what's important is you don't stay there too long. And sometimes you need the people around you to pull you out of that, whether it be just through accountability or through some encouragement, or, whatever the case is. Hey, I hear your challenge. I can empathize with you. And maybe here's some advice, or hey, here's how I can help you find, get an answer. Because to your point, there is so much on the plate. There is so much to juggle that you really got to take care of yourself first. Sort of mind, body, spirit is so important that it shows up. But again, we're all going to have those times where we take steps back, or we dip, or just are having a tough time, tough day, tough stretch. But how you can come out of that and not stay there too long is important.
Yeah, I think we talk about this quite a bit at Action Coach. Leadership and business ownership is often a very lonely place. You don't want to go home and talk to your partner or spouse about it every day, about all the challenges that you've had, and you certainly can't talk to your team about it. So having that community of people, or coach, someone that you can talk to, whiffle to, express what's going on for you. But also, I want to come back to the standard, holding you to a higher standard, inspiring you to think bigger, to move forward, to grow, to evolve, to lean in, is such a powerful thing, whether it's a mentor, a coach, a community in some form. I think is a really powerful message too.
It's so important. Fortunate that I've got, again, those people in my corner, that's, allowed me to, even when I stepped out of the corporate world into the coaching world, those that, really supported me. And, again, that when, decisions are hard sometimes, and, doubt creeps in and things like that. It's one thing to, talk to ourselves, but it's another thing to just know you've got some encouragement. And then, as that becomes cyclical, there's always an opportunity to give that back at times too.
One of my mentors says to me often, write this down. You don't know what you don't know until you do. And it's so true. I think about it often because, We just, unless you hear it from someone or you get that feedback loop, you just don't know what you don't know until you do.
So true.
So, Matt, 3 questions that I would love to ask you to wrap up. What's your favorite book and why?
Boy, hard to pick just one, because I've read a lot of the classics, the Think and Grow Rich, the Good to Great, all those. Big fan of a lot of those. I do need to mention that when I talked about COVID, I really poured into John Gordon at the time. John Gordon's known for his positive leadership, and he's someone that he really helped me kind of at a tough time to kind of understand where positive leadership could make such an impact. But I, in that same breath, though, big John Maxwell fan, and I think one of his more recent ones, High Road Leadership, just resonates. We talked about servant leadership and what it means, and John Maxwell knows it as well as anybody, just in terms of what it means to put others first, serve others. And how that comes back to give you rewards in ways that you can feel, sometimes see, but big fan of John Maxwell.
And best, or impactful mentor or coach for you throughout your career?
Again, several. Certainly a significant one. When I was, in basketball operations, our majority owner, Steve Demetrio, is a CEO of a couple different Fortune 500 companies. He's someone I, consider a friend, a mentor. He used to use the term coaching a lot. Actually, this is back in 2009, 2010. He poured into me. I was, I guess, a younger executive at that time. But believed in me, kind of put me into a role that I didn't have experience in. But with that, here I got to learn, albeit in a smaller organization, numbers wise. I got to learn from somebody who was a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, whether it was just knowing your financials and your numbers, to just some situational things we incurred with our team or otherwise. That's a relationship I certainly appreciate. And then along with that, we had another partner, Owen McCormick, who locally, him and I had a lot of lunches, a lot of coffees together, where it was just, leadership that I learned from him, being in business, how to treat people. That was something I learned from both of those guys, particularly, was just at the end of the day, it matters how you treat people. While business and goals and all that are important, the people come first, and the success in business will come as a result of that.
Best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Well, I think it's along those same lines, but I'm going to credit somebody else for it, because I think he taught me about it sooner than that. And he was a regional president of one of our local banks here in Erie, Pennsylvania. And after several years of being a regional president, he said, Matt, he said, I'm not the smartest banker. I'm not the most intelligent when it comes to running the operations of the bank. He said, but what I've always done is just cared about my people. He said, I walk the floor. I talk to our tellers. I talk to our maintenance people. I'm authentic. I genuinely care about them. And he said, that's gotten me to sort of where I am. And as a leader, that's what that organization needed. And he said, no matter what, it's all about how you treat people, you listen, you care. And if you do all of that, everything else will take care of itself. And surround yourself with good people, and put people in the room smarter than you are.
Matt Bresee, thank you so much for the learnings today.
Thanks, Michelle. Appreciate you having me.
Michelle Adams, your host here. Hats off to you for committing to your learning by listening to this podcast. And if you'd like some help implementing some of these strategies, then click the link in the description to find your local action coach. They can help you put these strategies into action and take your business and your life to the next level. In the meantime, like and subscribe so that you're the first to get our next episode. We'll see you soon.